I personally believe we will have stock all-time highs and Bitcoin all-time highs before the end of 2025.
Wow.
And so people are like fearful, but guess what's going to happen? The Fed has to cut.
Anthony Pompliano opens by addressing what's on everyone's mind. Markets are down and people are scared. But in classic Pomp fashion, he flips the fear on its head. The faster markets fall, the faster they tend to recover, especially when there's no underlying structural damage. In his view, the current downturn is driven not by systemic decay, but by fear and uncertainty, which are temporary.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
The faster it falls, the faster it will recover. The structural changes to the market have actually not occurred yet. So if all of a sudden we had one rate cut and Trump says 2 or 3 positive things, the market will be back to all-time highs, right? And so it's like there's not like a structural decay. Stocks are going down because people are fearful, right? You see the extreme fear and the fear and greed gauges, all that kind of stuff. So if that's the case, there's one X factor in all of this. I don't know if it'll happen, but what the administration is saying, and I'm just listening to what they're saying because that's their plan. They claim that they are going to give the largest tax cut in history to people who make $150,000 or less, not to billionaires and rich people. Like, by the way, Trump's been horrible for billionaires. I think they lost in the last 3 days. They lost like $500 billion, right? Yeah. Or collectively $7 trillion since he came into office, $500 billion just in the last 3 days. So like the whole idea of like, hey, everyone's getting rich, the exact opposite's happening. Like they actually are pretty pissed at him. But I had never heard a politician say, I want to give a tax cut to 150,000 or less. Now they're claiming that they're going to try to get federal income tax level to 0. Again, feels like shock and awe. And then maybe they can give some sort of tax cut. So if you can go from, call it, 30-ish% depending on the different income levels, and you can get down to 20%. Imagine if you could cut 1/3 of the federal income tax bill for every single American, which is like 80% of Americans or something make $150,000 or less. Put more money into their pockets, right? Like that would be incredible. And so if you look at this and you say, okay, the stock market is coming down, yes, but I personally believe we will have stock all-time highs and Bitcoin all-time highs before the end of 2025.
Wow.
And so people are like fearful, but guess what's going to happen? The Fed has to cut. I'm not predicting that they're going to do an emergency rate cut, but I think the odds of an emergency rate cut have significantly increased over the last 4 days. Rate cuts are not money printing, but it would help in terms of giving confidence back to the market. Hey, the Fed's not going to let this thing go off the rails, whatever. I do think that there's going to be a lot of talk of printing money. My guess is that the administration is probably going to be, well, definitely they're going to be less excited about it than they were in 2020 because they were part of printing some of that money. And they definitely will be less excited about it than the Biden administration was because they're doing the Doge stuff. And like they understand the government spending is a huge problem. And so if you said to me, like, what's like the perfect needle to thread here, which has low odds but high asymmetry, is tariffs get down to 5 to 10% blanket. We remove them for products that we need. We don't have a recession. We don't have high inflation. And there is a reshoring. There is an increase in American jobs. And people think that scenario, they're like, that's impossible. Maybe. I just have a higher odds on it. Not even, I'm not predicting that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying that while everyone is so bearish, I think that it's a complete overreaction. And so what I'm saying is, again, people really, really don't like, and half the country doesn't like the current administration. If you objectively look at them, they have been hyper successful. These people are not idiots. You may not like their policy. You may not think that they are rolling it out correctly, the communication, all stuff. But the one thing that we should all be able to agree on is you're not dumb. And so if you go and you look at somebody like Scott Bessent, who's not really that political, right? It's one like the Trump stuff, whatever. But Bessent is a good example. The guy understands. And I saw somebody talking about, they were like, Bessent is almost trying to do to China what he, Soros, and Druckenmiller did to the pound, right? He's trying to break their will. And so I just think that it's very easy to play Monday morning quarterback and be like, look at these morons. They don't know what they're doing because you see the stock market going down. But they openly have told you they don't care about the stock market. They're focused on the 10-year yield, which has been going down, and they're focused on oil. That's been going down. So they're accomplishing what they want. Now, they claim, and again, it's a claim, that is going to lay the foundation for this big economic boom, and it's going to be this amazing thing, and like, economic utopia or whatever. Yeah. Let's see. Right? If it happens, I think every American would be incredibly excited. I keep saying that if they give 0% federal income tax to people who make $150,000 or less, like, people be in the streets. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't care what my politics are, right? Like, I don't have to pay federal income tax. Again, is that likely to happen? Probably not. Is there some cut that's coming? Probably. And so then all of a sudden, does that offset the tariffs? Like, we could play this game all day long, right? It's a very complex system. And so I just think that people shouldn't be as fearful as they have been. And I think that tariffs will actually be, in hindsight, seen as much better for the country than kind of people right now with the very extreme reactions.
Pomp highlights how Bitcoin's correlation with the stock market has increased. In the early days, Bitcoin was held by ideologically driven individuals who didn't own stocks and weren't concerned with macroeconomic movements. But now, as adoption grows, the typical Bitcoin investor also owns stocks. That shared exposure to traditional finance means Bitcoin behaves more like a risk-on asset, especially during periods of macro volatility. Pomp stresses that this correlation is likely here to stay, at least until we see a major decoupling event, like a breakdown of fiat currency systems or an acceptance of Bitcoin as a global reserve currency.
Do we agree on the problem? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't agree on the problem. But my view of the problem, and I think that a wide portion of the population see really there's two Americas. And I think that Bitcoiners in particular really understand this better than most of traditional finance. But the two Americas are, you have one population that has killed it. The last 50 years has been amazing for them, right? They are the ones who are benefiting from stocks going up, all the money printing and the national debt, and like they love that system because it has enriched them. And so, show me somebody's salary or show me their paycheck and I'll tell you what their incentives are, right? And like that is, makes a lot of sense for them. It's very rational for them to say, hey, what's the problem? America's, this great thing. There's another group of people who frankly have been hurt by those same things. And so I recently heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, he was on a podcast and he said this data point, it just like blew my mind. He said in the summer of 2024, there was a record number of Americans who went on vacation in Europe. Mm-hmm. But also there's a record number of Americans who were dependent on a food bank.
Yep.
And like that is the extremes, right? Mm-hmm. And again, there's some people in the middle, but there really are two different America. And so if you look at, right now, I think that what you're having is a lot of people in finance, they're looking at their portfolios and like, this is crazy. The stocks are falling. But there's a lot of people in America who are like, I don't care. I don't have hope. I don't have a job. Food prices are too high, all that. And so again, it's not perfectly black and white, but I do think that like those two different experiences are really important. Now, the reason why I say that we have to agree that like there is that second group of people, kind of that working class, I'll use as the vernacular, is these economic policies are explicitly targeted at helping them. So if you look at it through the lens of the wealthy, the coastal elites, kind of that crowd, you're like, this is insane. Why would you break up the system that has enriched me? Like, I love that system. Well, the policies are not targeted to help you. The policies are actually targeted to help this other group. Now, that's in the short to medium term. Over the long run, the idea is that you can reshore manufacturing, you can kind of build a better foundation, a stronger economy, and actually helps all Americans, both wealthy and working class. But in the short term, the real pain is being felt by that working class. So I think that's like first and foremost is like we have to agree that there are two different Americas, and for definitely the working class, whatever we're doing is not working. So from their perspective, they're like, I don't care if you blow up the system. I don't care if you evolve the system. You just got to do something different for me because it's getting worse. And I think that one of the reasons why Trump has become president a second time is he really leaned into the populism. And the reason he was able to win, and you go and you look at the election data, pretty much every working class demographic shifted to the right. And a huge part of that is because they're growing in numbers. Right? So not only are they shifting, but then also it used to be maybe 30% of the population. Then it was 40, then it was 50. And you're just getting more and more people who are going into that working class. And so another thing that has happened in our country that I think is pretty unique that plays into the tariffs kind of indirectly is the political parties have basically switched places. So now if I said to you like anti-war, working class representative, like all these things, you'd be like, oh, you're talking about the Democratic Party. But that's the Republican Party now. And so there's this like really unique kind of dynamic in politics that's happening. So if you think about why is Bitcoin's correlation more closely tied to the stock market? Well, because more people that hold Bitcoin today have stocks. In the early days, there's a lot of people who, frankly, they just put all their money in Bitcoin. They didn't have stocks. They didn't care what happened in the stock market. They weren't buying or selling based on interest rates or geopolitical event. Like, they were just like, I'm a Bitcoiner. I like Bitcoin. That's my savings tool. I buy all Bitcoin and I just hold it. That's not true anymore. Like, a lot of people who hold Bitcoin or are coming in to buy Bitcoin now, they have stocks. They have these portfolios. And so they think risk on, risk off. Do I sell all my stocks in crypto or do I go and invest in stocks in crypto? And so you should expect that correlation to creep up. That's not going to go to 1, right? I think gold and Bitcoin are very closely linked. There are times where the correlation is higher or lower, but I do think that like we are not going back to the fully uncorrelated, world that we were in before, because you're getting mass adoption. And so as you get mass adoption, then the people who hold it all act the same. They're the masses. And so you should expect there to be that correlation. Now, the like quote unquote decoupling that I think everyone wants to see in terms of like the coupling can only occur if people basically say this thing is the new global reserve currency, this other stuff like doesn't work anymore, right? Because the other stuff fails so bad that Bitcoin, is the survivor. I just think we're very far away from that world, right? Like every time the Treasury Secretary talking about Bitcoin as a store of value is light years ahead of where we were 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, he said it on a recent interview. Bitcoiners,
we're winning, right? Like we're making progress. Congratulations. Awesome. That does not mean we're going to be the global reserve currency tomorrow. And so I think that if you look out over 30, 40, 50 years, I'm really excited about Bitcoin. What's going to happen in 6 months? I have no clue. And so I just think that you have to keep updating your mental model on like what Bitcoin is and how it operates in this, economic system. Because if you stay in the 2018 to 2022, kind of mindset, like BlackRock's here, right? Fidelity's here. Like they don't act the same. And so understand what they do that's different and how the world is changing. And that's, I think, what makes it so intellectually stimulating. And, frankly, it's good for people who create content because you always got something to talk about.
In his words, Bitcoiners are winning, but that doesn't mean the battle is over. We won't see global dominance of Bitcoin overnight. Instead, the key is to continuously update your mental model. BlackRock is here. Fidelity is here. Institutional players are changing the game. Bitcoin is no longer just a fringe asset, it's becoming part of the system. And with that integration comes new dynamics. It's no longer enough to say Bitcoin fixes this. Instead, we must understand how Bitcoin behaves within a complex economic system and how policy decisions, from tax cuts to tariffs to interest rates, can shape its trajectory. Please like and subscribe.